So good afternoon, everyone. My name's Kevin Buck. Taylor and I are super excited that you joined us today for a general chat session, and then a chat session really focusing on careers and gaming. We're really excited to present this to you. So we're going to cover 4 topics for what our agenda is going to be today. We're going to do factions, and we're going to do introductions. We're going to do some administrative introductions. Then the really important piece, Taylor and I are going to mute ourselves, and you're going to listen to our players. You're going to really meet our players and our statistics. And then after that, we're going to go into our general chat and a panelist question and answer session, and your question and then answers. I'm thrilled and privileged to manage the Northeast team for our Warriors to Work program for Wounded Warrior Project. A little bit about Wounded Warrior Project. We are a national nonprofit organization with over 170,000 registrants. Alumni and family members registered for our program. But the core of this, the Warriors to Work program, it falls under the financial wellness team, because we firmly believe that employment starts with financial wellness, or financial wellness is always already associated with employment. As you have sound mind, sound body, and sound employment, you're financially stable, you're participative in the community. Our program is really focused on assisting you for that military transition or retransition that you're ready to enter the workforce through a 7-step process. And we do things like your resume. We help you tailor a resume. We teach you how to search for a job. We teach you how to interview, or we coach you how to interview, and then we'll advocate on your behalf for those with those companies that we interact with.
A little bit more about Hire Heroes USA. We are a national nonprofit as well that helps military veterans, spouses, and current military members succeed in the civilian workforce. The way we do that is by pairing every single client with a transition specialist who's going to work with them essentially like a case manager. So they're going to help you get your resume up to date. They're also going to get you access to a ton of other resources, such as our online video resource library, which I'm going to have Kayla share the link on there to view that. If you are a current client, you can sign into MyTrack to view all those video resources on there. We also have virtual events such as the one that you're on now. We have a job board. We have training partners that provide free or discounted training opportunities for clients. And then we have a network of over 1,000 professional mentors in a variety of industries that can help a client that's looking to go into a variety of fields to talk about a mock interview, a career counseling session, salary negotiation, whatever you might be struggling with. We have a volunteer that can assist you with that. Since our start, we have helped over 52,000 clients get hired. And that number ticks up every day. So if you are interested in getting signed up for Hire Heroes USA, Kayla dropped the link in there. We also shared the link for the Wounded Warrior Project, so be sure to check that out as well.
All right, so super excited and privileged to be able to introduce James. So James is the Navigator and the president of 8 Circuit Studios. He's currently working on some phenomenal projects, but I'd like to mute myself and turn it over to James. James, an introduction about yourself, please.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. I appreciate that, Kevin and Taylor. Yeah, I'm James Mayo. Let's see. I've been in the game industry for about 30 years or so. Way back in the day, the first publisher that I worked at was Nintendo of America. Then from there, I transitioned after about 5 years over to Microsoft, where I got a bunch of formal training in management, and then eventually became a hiring manager, and worked at Microsoft for about 8 years. For Nintendo, you probably recognize some of the titles like Super Mario World. I worked on that, as well as Killer Instinct, and a whole host of Game Boy games. That's what it was called back then for their mobile hardware. For Microsoft, worked on Age of Empires, and was pretty adjacent to the Halo team. And then worked on the Mech Warrior series. This is FASA. So basically anything Mech Warrior, Mech Commander, the classics like that. Shifted over into, got out of the sort of AAA publishing side, these giant corporations, moved over into what's called a development house or development studio. Worked on titles like Fear 2, Fear 3 for first-person shooters. And then slowly started working at smaller and smaller companies, as I noticed that what was really getting me excited to get up in the morning was moving from a corporate environment where I learned a ton, but moving over into the indie space, you just have way more impact, and the contribution that you have goes much further. So I found that that worked out for me. And then in 2017, had wanted to work with a bunch of buddies who I'd worked with in the past over my career. And so we started up 8 Circuit Studios. And our flagship title right now is called Project Genesis. You can think of it like it's a genre mashup between sci-fi first-person shooting, and then we also add some space combat into the mix as well. So it's sort of this marriage of chocolate and peanut butter. And so we're pre-alpha. We're about 6 months to 9 months out from releasing. And we've been working with the Wounded Warrior Project, and then a couple of other charities as well. We've been working with stackup.org. They've been great to participate in lots of testing activities with us. Same with the Wounded Warrior Project, and we have some other communities that have expressed interest in this space as well. And I guess just to close the loop on it, one of the things that I hope to gain out of these kinds of conversations, or any conversations we're working with veterans, is how can we be of service to help you if you're interested in getting into the game industry? And I guess I'll leave it at that. Look forward to working with you guys. Thanks so much.
I would say, James, specifically, so what type of education background do you have, and what kind of schooling did you need to get into the field, in the gaming field, where you're at now, James?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I actually struggled quite a bit in school, high school specifically, and then tried to make a go at college. Couldn't really hack it. So I have a, I guess you'd call it a learning disability. It's dyslexia. So that's where you see like numbers and letters backwards and they transpose. Makes reading pretty difficult. But what was really interesting from my perspective is that there wasn't any like what I would call formal education that I needed. Now, at the time that I was attempting to get into like corporate, one of the companies that I did apply for was Google, and they had a requirement for college degrees. I don't know if that's the case anymore, but what I would say is what I found to be the case, at least when it comes to getting into the games industry, is that there's actually quite a few tools that allow people to sort of circumnavigate the more formal education process or the academic process. There'll be companies that may want to sell vocational skills, but at the end of the day, most of the skills that you need, you can probably pick up pretty easily, and I can cover some of that. But that just highlights my lack of education and technical expertise getting into the game industry. Sort of learned as I went.
James, tell us, what were the specific experiences you felt you needed, that you had, that were able to get you that career progression, or that next step opportunity, and progress your career in the gaming field?
It was, well, a lot of it was figuring it out. You know, when I got into the games industry, I was 19 years old, and I don't think I had any clue what I wanted to do or where I wanted to go, except that I just knew that I wanted to be in the game industry. But eventually what happened is I recognized that I really loved helping people grow. And so at least at Microsoft, it might be the case in other companies, they lay out a path for you, and you kind of have this choice. You have a path that makes you an individual contributor. And these are people who would be like artists, engineers, who don't really want to be managers. And they just want to, they're kind of like craftspeople is basically what they are, focused on a very direct skill set that they want to develop. I went in the other direction, which was management. And so lucky for me, I guess Microsoft had been around long enough that they had some pretty awesome programs. So I guess this is a direction where I did get some education that was more formal. but I knew that the second thing that I wanted to do was work with lots of people who had very different approaches and perspectives onto what based on what they were interested in contributing to for games and game development. And from my perspective, it was sort of just surrounding myself with people who were smarter than me, who I kind of looked up to. They were great managers. They were also incredible artists, incredible engineers. And the particular position I found myself in was as a producer. And what producers do kind of in, I guess, all three industries, like the game industry, the movie industry, and the music industry, is they oftentimes will, they're kind of like traffic cops, or they're like choreography in a certain, or choreographers in a certain way, which is they try and get all of these different disciplines to collaborate together to produce something from sort of concept to shelf. And so I think that maybe my temperament is such that I'm kind of always keeping one foot on, well, what do I got to solve? What are the problems I have to solve right in front of me today? How do I get those? Or if other individuals are running into issues that are causing them to be blocked, typically it's around communication. How do I remove those barriers for other people? And then I also like to keep an eye somewhat on the horizon, which you kind of have to do, which is directing highly complex enterprises to try and get schedule, the budget, and the resources necessary, as well as build the team to merge both the art and science of video game development. So I think it's just me being obsessively curious and recognizing that I'm also at service to big organizations or small, where there's lots of people who are way smarter than me. And I guess it's almost like sailing a ship. You know, how do you get the ship across the ocean safely with everybody on board? And I think it's just that endeavor that keeps me motivated to try to build the skills to be a better sailor.
So to your point, James, you made a really good point here when you were that manager. So how did you get that first position in gaming? And for those that are starting out, what advice do you have for them to get that first position in gaming? Because I know Michael's already, yeah, I'm going to get you my contact information. I'm going to help you out if you need it. But go ahead, James, from your perspective, then we'll get to Michael. How did you get that first job? And take us through those steps, please.
You bet. In the game industry, there's sort of a couple of entry points. Like if you don't have a lot of deep skill set to pitch. QA is typically the most common route if you don't have a lot of deep experience. And that's typically because almost everybody games, even if you're not a video gamer, whether it's card games or you play Monopoly. You have a sense of what it's like to experience something that's fun. And most people are at least informed on that level. So QA is a pretty good route. That's the route that I went in. Actually, let me back up. There's another route too, which is the real entry point for me was consumer service, or it was also a gameplay counselor. So back in the day before the internet, what you would do is instead of being able to look up how to get through a game, you would call people in. And so for me, this was the position that I occupied, where kids who were playing didn't know how to get through Zelda, they would call me up. And so it wasn't even really in games where I was working, but it was sort of in the orbit of game development. And then from there, I was just really hungry to get on a game development team. And so I think that was the second piece of that puzzle. If you are looking to get into the game industry, it's actually a whole new world from when I got in. There's kind of two ways that you can do it. One is the path that I mentioned, which is like a level entry position, get your foot in the door, so to speak. But another way to get into the game industry is to demonstrate a skill set by working on games themselves. And that might seem like a bit difficult to do, but there are a lot, there's like two kinds of resources that you want to pay attention to. The first is what they call a game engine. And there are two big ones. I would encourage people to focus on Unity, but just take a look at Unity, and there's a ton of information online about how to get a small game up and running if you are able to get into a website and load it up and navigate, an application on the web. You'll probably have some success in the Unity game engine. And you can actually kind of see what it's like to develop games. This is, again, tons of stuff on YouTube that can get you up and running and conversant, at least in the language of game development. The third direction that you can go is take a look at your resume, your career trajectory as it stands. And there's actually a lot of domain overlap, especially if you're in a relatively technical space. It could be hardware engineering, there's paths there, but software programming and that kind of engineering is a great pathway in. And then there's also art and game design. Game design's a little bit trickier, probably want some demonstrations of products there, but there's lots of different routes to get in. And if you feel like there's anything that I said that resonates, I'd be happy to have a conversation with you in a breakout meeting if you wanted me to maybe offer some suggestions on routes that you can take.
So last general question I'm going to ask, and would both of you chime in here? Chime in here with your top threes or your top fours, but then we're really just getting some phenomenal live questions from the audience. So we're gonna push that fast here. So here you go. Top three, other than the resume, what are the top three skills, or what are the top three items that candidate needs to be considered that strong candidate that's going to catch your interest, James as a hiring manager or Michael as a recruiter? Because I get that question all the time as a recruiter. Well, what can I do? What can I add to my resume? So tell us, what are your top three, top five things that you need to see on that resume?
So I guess maybe outside of the resume, there's a couple of things that are helpful. It's really easy if you're in art because you have a portfolio, and that's almost turnkey if your work shows well based on what people are looking for. Same thing in game design. So those are a little bit less ambiguous. Some of the ones where you can shift domain experience into game development if you've been in other industries, like engineering, like production, or program management. That's probably the big one. Like if you've been in logistics, it's really actually kind of taking what Michael said to heart, which is as you investigate the position and you have a resume, what you're doing is not just providing a resume based on your experiences, but what you're doing is taking a look at the position that you're interested in, really understanding what it is that the requirements are in the position, and then what I typically do is heavily craft any resume that I have to specifically meet the needs of what that position is asking for. And so it's a lot of heavy crafting. You actually have to think quite deeply about what those positions are looking for. You almost have to kind of see around corners, almost like mind reading. It's a skill in and of itself. But again, that's another thing that I'm super happy to help folks with. It's one of the things I love doing. I love doing it myself. So I guess that's the first thing, is craft your resume. And then the second is, I think it's also helpful, like Michael said, is seek people out who already occupy that position. LinkedIn is a superb resource for people who may already be in the position that you desire to occupy. And it's great to talk to them and really get an understanding of what the language is, what the values are, what the priorities are for any given position that's there. So I would say it's probably less that I'm going to be able to offer silver bullets, and more suggest an approach. And so happy to help with that.
So on to the really, really exciting piece. I'm going to bring Taylor back in. Taylor's going to take over our live Q&A. So gentlemen, she's going to take control here. So Taylor, I turn it over to you.
So if you have that project management experience, Jonathan and Kristen were asking if someone wanted to try and pursue the non-technical project manager or producer type roles within gaming, most associate roles ask for time specifically in the industry. So how can you overcome that strongly advocated requirement, given that your only project management experience might have been in the military? James, this might be a question for you to answer there.
Yeah, actually, Michael already gave us an awesome tip, and we'll just keep driving it home, which is, you really want to get conversant in the language, which also means kind of the culture as well. And there's some tools that he suggested to do that. And so what you're really doing is you're building up your own repository of information that you can draw from that speaks the language of the person that you're trying to get the job from, or the company. And so if you want to hop from, say, project management that's specific to experiences in the military, what you're looking for is, okay, well, how do I find a way to relate that in the game industry? And so just here's some examples. So in the game industry, what you're looking to do is break something that's complex. We already kind of covered that, where it's you get artists and engineers to work together. So there's a communication component. And so that's what you're looking for in your own experiences. How do I emphasize my ability to bring two different types of teams or brains together to hash out particular problems? But then a game is, like any campaign mission, you're trying to drive towards results. And oftentimes what you're trying to do is break something that's very complicated into something that's relatively easy to do. So, or bite-sized pieces is maybe a better way to think about it. And so we break things down into milestones, break it into chunks. And then from there, these chunks become much more manageable. So already what we've done is, if you have some similar experience in project or program management in the military, we're basically doing something that's very similar to like a mission or a campaign, where you've got an objective that you're trying to complete, and then you just break it down into smaller pieces. We call those pieces milestones, and then just demonstrate that you have the capability to choreograph any number of people. The military is pretty formal about how they break down their groups, probably more so than the game industry. And if you have this structure laid out, then what you're already demonstrating is your ability to solve problems, see around corners, and apply the skills that you've got from the military towards game development, which is the challenge, interestingly enough, especially if you're demonstrating competence in the area of program management, is that game development is really fast and loose. And it's probably, in my opinion, if you're getting people who you're talking to, and again, I don't want to take the onus off of you or the responsibility off of you, but oftentimes you can help people who are thinking in a less structured format, which is often what happens in the game industry. Oftentimes it's just a bunch of us kids who just happen to get old enough to have more responsibility. And maybe we don't know some of the more formal approaches. And if you can offer some insights based on your experience and do it in a way that can take into consideration, a person's ego, because oftentimes we always have one. But if you can offer them something in service to the goals that they're trying to complete, it can often be a winning combination for you, or at least a bit of a key. So yeah, a long-winded answer of saying, yeah, take your experiences, figure out what the vocabulary is, use that vocabulary, and then just demonstrate your competence, especially in program management, because a lot of the skills do transfer quite nicely.
Awesome. And then another question kind of specific to gaming. Sorry, James, we're going to keep you off mute here for a second. We have a couple of people who were interested in going into the publishing side of gaming, so not necessarily the technical side. So how do you recommend they break into the publishing side?
There's kind of two ways to do it. I would say that the long game would be to look for either an independent studio that's growing, or look for a studio that actually works with publishers. So that's one route. Again, that's the long route. That was the route that I was lucky that the game industry was growing at the time that I got into it. So it was a little easier for me to get into the publishing world, but you can take the route where you're gaining experiences at a more granular level. If you want to go corporate and get into publishing, then what you're looking for is, and again, I would probably have to know a little bit more about the situation, but it kind of depends on where a good level for you to enter is. Do you enter at a ground level? Do you enter in something middle management and upper management? Are you interested in the individual contributor track, which I mentioned before, or are you interested in management itself? And each one of those you can demonstrate competency, but probably need to know a little bit more to help you get into that space. So feel free, again, hit me up after this conversation. Happy to keep it going.
Yeah, and that's another great point, that finding a mentor, whether you're trying to go into gaming and tech, is going to be really beneficial because you can ask those one-on-one questions specific to your advice versus just asking in a broad sense. So that's something we offer at Hire Heroes USA. They both share their LinkedIn profiles. So be sure that you connect and reach out with those questions as well. What programs are out there for individuals who have already transitioned from the military? So are there any programs that can help them get an internship? Because I know the DoD Skill Bridge, you have to be active duty to sign up, but any for those that have already transitioned out maybe a while ago? Awesome. And then that same question over to you, but Richard also emphasized the fact, is there a recommended way to find internships in gaming development? And James, that one I think is for you.
Actually, that's a great point. I didn't really emphasize that or even think about it, but of the companies for internships specifically, it's going to be the publishers that are going to have those kinds of programs. They're a little bit weightier, more sophisticated, require a little bit more management. However, they're often incredible opportunities to get into these companies. And what's really cool, I mean, talk about a foot in the door. Oftentimes it can be a bit challenging when you come into a new position because you're learning a ton. It doesn't matter if you're from the military or not, or just any new position can be a bit overwhelming as you figure out what the culture of the company is and then figure out your role and responsibility. But as an intern, a little bit less of the pressure is off. I mean, you're definitely in, I want to be a sponge mode where you're trying to suck up as much information as possible. But you also get to make relationships, which I don't think that can be overstated, how important it is to develop those relationships, because those are going to be the people who open the doors for you inside of that company. They can give you a lot of great information. They don't necessarily have to be in a mentorship position, though oftentimes what you'll find, especially with people who have been in their positions for a long time, it's one of the most rewarding things that you can do in your career, which is give back to people who are coming up into the position that you once occupied. So food for thought there. But yeah, go the publisher route. Sony, Microsoft, Nintendo, Ubisoft. Heck, there's a lot of companies in Europe actually that offer internships that man, I wish I had known about when I was a kid. So lots of really cool opportunities, especially if you like traveling and seeing foreign lands, which I'm sure many people do and get the opportunity to do in the military.
Awesome. And then another question from Michael here. He said, are certain gaming jobs more welcoming to work from home situations? And then a follow-up question to that, how do you suggest addressing the topic with recruiters if you did want to be work from home?
Yeah, I'll echo that. It's a complete revolution that's happening in the game industry and then tech more broadly, where there's still there might be some reasons to have local centralized places to work, but almost nowhere, at least in sort of my peer group, my colleagues that I'm talking to, almost nowhere is expecting people to anymore travel and move and be on site. So it's a whole new world out there, which is incredible. It's awesome. There is, like everything, there's nothing's, what is it? All good or all bad. There is a trade-off. And so that trade-off is because you can work anywhere. There's now an opportunity, at least in the games industry, but I think tech more broadly, to begin working on the global stage. And so you're not just competing now with people who are, in a local location, or even in the United States. Now, who you're competing against is people all over the world. You could be in Antarctica, it doesn't matter. You got a decent internet connection and you're good to go. But here's the good news to counter that flip side. Not a lot of people are quite yet aware of that. I think the revolution is happening so quickly that now is the perfect time for you, if you're looking for a career change or to start a new career, to get in on it. And then so that's the game industry. And then again, tech more broadly. Let's see, there was something I wanted to say. No, I think I'll leave it at that. And if it comes up, I'll raise my hand. But yeah, apply broadly, because everybody's hiring and it's okay to be remote. In fact, oftentimes encouraged.
So I'll pass it over to Kevin real quick, and then we'll close out today's session.
Yeah, so I looking at my watch, and as the conversation's going, I just can't believe it's been an hour already. So to Michael and to James, Taylor, Kayla, and I just can't thank you enough. Your words of wisdom, your experience, your input, significant time out of your day. So thank you for your time and your talents and your knowledge and your wisdom imparting on us. But more importantly, on our attendees. From the Wounded Warrior Project side of the house to the attendees, look, reach out. We have these contacts. We are able to assist you with your employment for yourself, your family, and your family members. To Kayla and to Taylor, thank you so much for including myself and Wounded Warrior Project and the Warriors at Work program in this. Super excited for this collaborative effort. But again, gentlemen, thank you so much. Taylor, over to you, please.
Awesome. And I just want to also say thank you to our panelists. Remember that you can sign up for our services if you haven't already. And then I think Kayla just dropped out the Wounded Warrior Project program, so get connected there. And remember, we did share the LinkedIn profiles of both Michael and James. So highly recommend reaching out and send that personal message with it, reminding them where you got their information and specifically what your questions are. Make it easy for them when they reach out or when they respond to you. But thank you all so much again for joining us today. And we hope that you all have a great rest of your week.